Hello, I'm Riley, and I guess I'm going to be your host tonight. So, we have a wonderful reading planned for you guys. We have 6 people reading. All of them are part of the English department here at Iowa State. Real quick, I'm just going to make sure that things are working right. Can people reply on the Facebook thing if you can hear me and see me okay? I've never done this before. Let's see. Let's see if it works. I think it's a little bit delayed. So if there's an awkward pause after I ask this, then we will see. Yes, can hear and see you. Okay, perfect. That's how long it took before I said that, and then I saw you respond. Okay, so we're just gonna go, and it looks like there's about maybe a 20-second delay, but it should be working a-okay. And if anything ever is not working, please feel free to leave a comment and be like, what the heck is happening? And I'll try to figure it out. But hello, welcome to Virtual Emerging Writers Reading Series. Normally, we host one of these readings once per month during the school year. But unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 adjustments made on campus, both our March and April readings had to be canceled. So luckily, we have 6 readers that were scheduled to go in March and April who are going to be reading today for a little mini virtual reading. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce to you our first reader. So let me pull that up. Okay. Rachel McKenny is an associate teaching professor at Iowa State University, as well as a writer of humor and fiction. She's been published recently in the New York Times, McSweeney's Internet Tendency, The Rumpus, and other outlets. And here's the great stuff. Her debut novel, The Butterfly Effect, is forthcoming in December 2020. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Rachel. Now I'm going to drag a screen over, and it might look a little weird, but it's going to work, I promise. Bear with me for a sec. Okay. Rachel, are you there?
I don't know. Am I here? Can you guys see me on the screen?
Okay. There you are. Okay, perfect.
All right. I'm going to read 2 short humor pieces for you tonight. So I know many people have been doing more cooking during this whole mess than usual. So you probably have been discovering new terrible baking blogs that you never knew existed. So this first humor piece is called Hi, from the long story before the recipe on this blog. Before you get to Great Nana's spiced zucchini cake, I thought we could spend some time together, roughly 25 minutes of ad-interrupted reading. Here at Hometown Baking Blog, we know that quality time counts. Quality time baking, quality time with your family, and especially quality time scrolling down through a story that, if you took time to read it, would tangentially tell you all about the pleasure of summer zucchini, Great Nana, we call her Martha Meemaw, and her arm wrestling racket. Understanding Meemaw's career in arm wrestling is actually, we think, the first ingredient to a good spiced zucchini cake. So we hid 3 of the necessary steps inside the text of a roughly 3,800 word story. Want to know the baking time? How many minutes did Meemaw hold the Chattanooga chin at bay with just her right wrist? As some readers have noted in the comments, the skip to recipe link doesn't take you to the directions, but detonates a pop-up reading Mind Your Manners and installs a tracking cookie on your browser. No, silly, you can't eat that cookie. It sells your information to a foreign government, which you honestly deserve for not being able to give a lady just 30 minutes of your time for a homespun tale about strong spiced zucchini cake, strong family values, and strong biceps. If you're looking for physical cookies, yum yum, you'll find Martha Mima's Charleston Choco Oat Chick cookies here. Millennials don't have the patience anymore to just listen. Take, take, take. As Mima would say, increase the leverage on your anchored arm by forcing your opponent into the low position. Exactly, Mima. It's not about using your power for its own sake, but to force your opponent, or reader, into a position that gives you control. In the olden days, you would have to sit down at the kitchen table across from a family elder to acquire their secret recipes. Here, all we require is cell phone data as you stand in the aisle of your local grocery store trying to scroll past My Family Epic to get to the ingredient list. But you'll never know how much nutmeg you need if you don't know how Mima ended up hoof to hand with the Anderson's Mule Flora. Good luck with too much nutmeg, pal. Also, if you're trying to scroll through this recipe on a cell phone screen, it will take roughly 35 minutes. You thought you might have found another recipe on a website which doesn't have a story prefacing it? We think you'll find it lacks something. Mima always said to defeat your opponent, you had to align your shoulder with your arm and rotate seamlessly. That's why upon entering Hometown Baking Blog, we installed a virus which will be launched upon typing the words zucchini, spiced cake, or porn on any of the major search engines. Honestly, if you don't have an hour to ponder zucchini, hear about Mima, and learn a little bit about the mechanics of the Tallahassee top roll, do you really have time to bake? That was originally published in The Belladonna, which is a wonderful online humor magazine, which focuses only on women's writing. So go check that out if you haven't before. The second one is a short humor piece, not actually inspired by my own experiences in the past. I have wonderful students, but this is a composition TA grades your Rate My Professor review. Clear attention getter in the use of a personal story. First day stories are a common experience that your audience can relate to, and they will sympathize with being given an assignment on the first day. Remember, though, that all caps usually signifies yelling and can be discomforting for readers. Revise here, perhaps? Next, within your review, make sure that your figurative language isn't shrouding your ideas in mystery. That's an example of figurative language use. So when you write in your review that this class was like eating glass for breakfast, try to add a clarifying phrase afterward. Was it a morning class, thus the breakfast tie-in? Did this class specifically cause injury to your digestive organs? Also, eating glass is a cliche, consider cutting. Define key terms in context for your reader. While some readers may know the designation RBF, consider defining it in a sentence to make your point more clear. Your sentence might be rewritten as, she's got some major resting bitch face, RBF, that makes her look like Professor McGonagall in a cardigan. Any future use of the acronym can stand by itself. For instance, commenting on RBF is a sexist way to examine a female professional in any field, as it assumes that the default facial expression should always be a smile. Clarify for your reader how you arrived at your overall quality 1 and difficulty 5 scores more clearly. Remember that claims should be backed by evidence you undoubtedly heard in whatever class you were enrolled in, as you were present on those days. Finally, be careful not to contradict yourself. In your awarding of a chili pepper, your reader may be confused about the educator's merits. Don't confuse the reader by suggesting that someone can be hot while not smiling, or that being around someone hot would make eating glass more tolerable in some way. It also should be noted that discussing the idea of hotness in relation to a well-known character from young adult literature may alienate some readers. Overall, some strong potential for revision here. Good comma usage. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, now you're gonna awkwardly stay on the screen while I try to figure out how to get me back up. Oh, no, that's not gonna work. Okay, here. Hold on, guys. Oh, no. Oh, no. I gotta switch the camera. I gotta switch the camera. Oh, no. 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 I gotta switch the camera. Oh, no Uh-oh. I knew this was gonna happen. Everything was running too smoothly to be true. Please hold, Facebook friends. I have to turn my video off on this so that I can get it to work on this. Okay. Yay! Okay. Whew. And this is why I have a glass of wine while I'm doing this. Stressful. But here we are. We're moving on to reader number 2. Thank you so much, Rachel. It was really wonderful to hear some of your work. And also, I'm just so excited about your news about your novel coming out. So congratulations. And thanks for being our first reader. So next, we are going to move on to Richard. So let me go ahead and introduce you to him, and then we'll finagle with technology once again and try to get his picture back up. So, Richard Frailing often writes poems about trees, or at least trees appear frequently in poems about time, memory, and natural cycles. These days, he'd rather be planting trees than writing about poems about them. But for now, he has poems to present to you, not trees. Which is fitting, as this is a literary reading rather than a botanical conference. He is also a passionate guitarist and recently started painting. He thinks every artistic media is similar, all landscapes, all dreams. He doesn't usually remember his dreams, so he has to weave new ones. And yesterday, he turned 31 and is thankful for all the birthday wishes and for all of you tuning in. He misses y'all and hopes you're well. Shout out to the Virginians watching. Enjoy. So as you can tell, Richard's our funny guy in the MFA program. He's probably blushing now that I'm saying this. Sorry, Richard. But it had to be thrown in there. But coming up next, Richard, let's see if I can get him pulled up here so you can hear his wonderful poetry. There you are. Are you there?
Hello.
Perfect.
So I guess, yeah, we're doing this. We're doing this thing. Thanks for watching. And yeah, so I have 3 poems to read for y'all. This is kind of weird because it's behind, so it's kind of like there's an element of faith involved here. Hope you're all well. These first 2 poems are poems about childhood or adolescence. I'm interested in how the natural world records or how it sort of remembers. I know that's an anthropocentric word. But yeah, so first thing you need to know about these first 2 poems is that they both kind of revolve around this huge tree that was on my parents' in my parents' backyard when I grew up. There was this huge rope swing. This rope swing was about 50 feet, and so it was really big. And I can't really describe that correctly in a poem, but I've tried. So, yeah, this first poem is called Twisting the Ropes, and it's sort of about, I guess, being I'm just going to read it. So, Twisting the Ropes. 100 rings spread lopsided from the cut loblolly's core. The cone which fell here and not 20 feet further from the oak already strong enough to spread a shadow across the hill. I sit on the stump and trace the outer years for ripples I know don't exist, imagining its memory of my weight and the swing Dad strung with a fishing pole. As a boy, I would twist the ropes up to the 50-foot limb, jump to the board, and spin a dream of flight with the tightening and dangling of my legs, letting my head fall back to see salt marsh, magnolia, and house, blurred and inverted in an open shutter, No rings show this, but its andrologist might first blood, strain, storm surge, and a cancerous loss of needles. A week in August without AC, sleepless in heat and sound of foxes fighting or mating, my brother punching a hole in the wall if he hadn't wailed enough on me. And if I laughed when I spun on the swing, it was quiet, knowing from the baritone's jeers and choir how my voice sounded, until I simply stopped singing. The wood I sit on is still resinous, but only deep in lignin, not yet dried by light or pocked by cicadas, whose dance singed the entire week before 7th grade. I was as tall as my brother, and my voice had not yet cracked. He must have known that his years of easy fights were soon over. We'd come across some paintball guns, and we were firing them at the tree. I wanted to cross the yard, maybe to set up a smaller target. He promised not to shoot. But walking back, he fired once and hit my shirtless flesh. Red vegetable oil. It wasn't from the pain, but from thinking he would stop. So I just stood there until my crying quieted. I quieted. Stopped fighting back, especially if he wanted me to. So, sorry if that was a bit of a bummer. So, my brother's a good dude, but, we're brothers and all that stuff. This next poem is kind of a mini epic about childhood. It's called Body Equals Sound. So it's sort of an equation. I like to think of poems as being able to sort of bend the laws of physics and kind of to really weave through memory and the natural world and the physical world in a way that we can't in everyday life. And I think that it's sort of like the best daydream. That's kind of how I feel about writing poetry. So yeah, this poem is called Body Equals, and it's sort of about I think childhood misconceptions, and kind of as writers we're all a bit like observers in an obsessive way maybe. So this is sort of about that, but in a the beauty that one can see when there's a very thin veil between childhood misconception and reality. And fever dreams, actually. I said I don't remember my dreams, but I do remember the dreams, so it wasn't mine. Okay, sorry. Body Equals Sound. Fever dreaming, pink dusk turned in the apple of my lung, capillaries whistling like organ reeds. All this I saw, childhood asthma and bone pain. Knees, shins where tendons rubbed, cells divided. My temperature rose, and the squeezed note with it fell, and the worn hurdy-gurdy of me covered in cold sweat called for Mom. Before I thought puberty was the name of my brother's middle school principal, and I really did, Mr. Puberty. Before I smelled the word on Aaron, as my brother, like phosphorus from a snuffed match, I saw evening peel reeds from their shadows, watched fireflies trace yearning, cupped one in my hands and wondered about its burn, unseen on the sweaty cues of my palms. But rather than the lines of my hands aglow, it was soft clay musk fused with the sharpness of rye that didn't leave. Clay malleable and dried into fabric of the family station wagon, its rear-facing seats. In the way back, I waved and giggled at the cars following, drivers like my own parents, going somewhere off-screen. From a movie whose tunnel lights and road rewound, pulling some decision made behind my small head. I held my breath through the tunnel, half dreaming the ship props churn above, mechanical suns in the gyres upturned murk, low murmur, blurring metal tendrils at the bottom of the river. Then light, and Mom cracked the windows to early spring. Crepe myrtles pink, petals spilling in our wake. rushing to school early and in time for zero bell. Smell of clay and turpentine. Students rubbed sleep into charcoal drawings. Desire blurring the edges of misproportioned pairs. Easy A and room to daydream about whoever before morning prayer on the intercom buttoned the collars of our blue and red. I drew too, before my own school day began, religiously with the same students and always the same blue whale, its profile from memory, the W encyclopedia's spine split and pages blazed, and a patina of finger oil. On the way home from the beach, station wagon spilling sand, we played 20 questions, though it only ever took one for the bigger bodies to guess mine. Blue whale? Yes, always unfazed, before rattling off numbers about the size or tons of krill per day, how fast and deep it could glide. But at 7, everything was in flight, everything suspended in the medium and tetherless. Jonah, I was sure, had lived in a stomach, although not in a whale like the model we'd stood below at the Smithsonian. Just too small. I'd seen the real ones in fever dreams. From the inside, like I saw the inside of my own body, pink, larynx stretching and deepening like a pipe organ. I couldn't stop it, nor a feeling of flight in my gut, pulled from one end of the tunnel to the other, as if riding a pendulum whose arc grew each. On a swing in my backyard, sometimes I'd sit and hit to watch its quick ripple telegraph to the limb and back, twice perfectly before diffusing into a wash. I saw that more weight made a tighter rope, faster ripple, higher note, and thought how the bigger bodies and deeper voices would produce a higher tone, how even the most stoic men in my family couldn't not giggle loosed from gravity's slow pull on their old sinew. Grandpa, whose ears had grown to great conches and nose to a polished chord from staying awake to the unseen, and whose own name had flaked off the dry, rotted sail of his mind like a cactus stripped of its pollen, chuckled. There's no other word for the sound of a sudden rise in his gut. The world is a whale, singing so far underwater and so high pitch. Closest we come to hearing it is flotsam in the wake of those that lead. I heard somewhere how women lose low frequencies from their hearing as they age. For men, it's the highs. I feel like I might have gone over time, so that's all I got for you now. Thanks again for tuning in, and hope you're all well.
Thanks, Richard. That was great. And again, happy belated birthday.
Yeah.
Sad that we couldn't party with you yesterday, and sad that the Iowa weather didn't cooperate so you could spend some nice time in the sunshine. But thanks so much for your poems. That was great. Okay, so moving on to our next reader, and wow, it's so exciting to see how many people are here with us tonight. Let's see, I'm looking at the Facebook. This is bad. I shouldn't be looking down at my phone, right, during the Facebook Live, but that is what I am doing. So let's see. We've got 41 people watching right now. That's pretty exciting. Okay, so moving on to our third reader, we have Virginia. So Virginia Kovach is a native Midwesterner, having lived in either Wisconsin or Iowa her entire life. She writes fiction as well as poetry. She writes to shine a light on the people and other forms of life we tend to forget in the exhausting pursuit of empty, materialistic goals. Virginia loves being a part of the creative community in Ames. She loves the supportive, inclusive community that is the Ames Poetry Revival, a local group that puts on monthly poetry slams. She and her husband Scott celebrate local music by inviting musicians to perform on their radio show, Road Trip Iowa, which broadcasts every Sunday night on 89.1. And they also have a podcast called Scotch and Gin, which explores pressing societal issues in long form. In all her work, Virginia values creativity, empathy, and community. She draws strength and inspiration from faith and a sense of wonder. So, without further ado, let's give you Virginia.
Okay.
Hold on.
Hi.
There you are. Okay.
I actually don't have any fiction tonight. I mostly have poetry, but I do have a little bit of nonfiction. I usually write about flowers, but I also write about people. So this is a poem I wrote recently, not about flowers, called COVID Saturday. Still reeling from the blessing, work in the time of disappearing livelihoods and lives, I opened my computer to face tasks I shoved yesterday to later. Now is later, but even blessings make me tired, enough to curl up on the covers I so carefully smoothed a couple hours before. And 40 minutes turns to 90 into who cares, and to lie here watching a video of Benedict Cumberbatch saying penguins, funny enough for me to laugh, enough to be strong again, awake enough to open procrastinated tasks, but I don't open them. I call my dad and listen to him tell me the Union Pacific Railroad has sick engineers, that even though he isn't one of them, he is wary. He now works in the essential sector. I love you, Dad, means you are essential to me too. Okay. And this next one is a love poem to my husband, Scott, and he said I could share it. So it's called Our Empathetic Genes. You and me, bipolar type 1 for life. Cheers. It isn't a death sentence, they told us when we each first encountered the label. Not a death sentence, no, but a lifetime one. We know its lifeness in the way our brains work against work that we long to do with full heart and imagination, our neurons lighting out of sync, dancing to our depression, not our good intention. We know lithium, the salt for the brain that saves people like us, and sometimes ruins livers, fetuses. We know how this wonder salt and other drugs can make our hands shake. We know lines like, maybe that makes the customers uncomfortable. I know exactly what you mean, you told me that night under the stars when we walked through campus, haunting our college with steps on its unkept promises, its powerlessness against psychotic breaks and prejudice. I know exactly what you mean. It was no favorite song you overheard from my earphones on a bus, no ordering the same Americano meeting. It was pain touching pain, palm to palm. So, we promised, and we are keeping. We fight the odds, even when we fight. Our DNA persuaded us to keep it just this way. Our never future children to have no sorrow like ours. No for life. But our poems are offspring too. And to those, our sorrow is a gift. Okay, so moving on to flowers, which is my obsession, creatively. This is a segment of a long essay that I wrote about my relationship with flowers. This is the first part of it. And if I have time, I'm going to share another small part of it. But I'm going to share this first part. So it's called My Heart Has Leaves and Petals. There is something called the language of flowers. It's fancy and Victorian. People Google it sometimes. My mom once gave me an illustrated reference book. White rose equals purity, daisy equals attachment, violet equals modesty, that sort of thing. It's fun to think about. It conjures up images of gentlemen with top hats and serious letters and secret meanings between lovers, embroidered handkerchiefs and lacy fans. Most of us know that that's all silliness. But what of those words in their purest form? The language of flowers. We all speak it, or at least we can, if we listen. I have listened for a long time. My family moved into a shabby rental house in Menasha, Wisconsin when I was a kid. I didn't like the ugly brown siding, except that it had a funny texture you could write on with snow. I didn't like the walls, which were a kind of thick cardboard, silverfish-like. You could punch a hole in those walls if you tried hard enough. There were things to like, however. It had a big backyard, and it was across the street from train tracks where my brothers and I collected rocks and grasshoppers, and there was a lilac bush. I think I discovered it myself. Yes, even if someone told me about it, I discovered it myself. It was tall, and it was probably 2 bushes because there was a space in the center where I could stand. One day in early spring, I stepped inside. Tiny clustered buds, dark mauve and silky smooth, wavered in the breeze on branches with heart-shaped leaves. Over the next few weeks, I watched the buds expand and expand until they finally burst into big fluffy lavender blooms. We cut them and put them in vases. Their heavenly smell filled the house until the flowers drooped. They were gone so quickly. Until next year, that is, when the magical window of time returned. I adopted lilacs as part of myself. By the time I got to high school, I had chosen lilacs as a talking point favorite, maybe because I was slow to pick up band names and couldn't afford name brand clothes. I drew lilacs in art class. I had my mother take a picture of me hugging a lilac bush, which is hard to do. When I was a junior, I carried a bouquet of lilacs and roses to prom. The lilacs wilted instantly. They drooped over my hands in the picture, but I was smiling anyway. The next prom, I embroidered beaded lilacs below the neckline of my dress. I don't remember a lot of other people my age being so enamored with flowers, but as I grew older, I learned that I wasn't that unique when it came to that specific one. Many people associate lilacs with their grandmothers and old country houses. Many brides want them in their bouquets. Florists often persuade them to accept something else, so the bouquets don't droop over their hands like my silly prom bouquet did. Occasionally, I run into someone who doesn't like them, but it's rare. I talked to a guy once who told me he was in the process of tearing them out of his yard because they took over his lawn. Such violence towards something I consider precious shocked me, but as far as negative emotions surrounding flowers go, his landscaping preferences were mild. I would learn over time how emotions about flowers can be dark, sometimes devastating, but that would take some time to learn. Okay, so I'm going to pause that. In general, I like to write about kind of the complications of visual beauty, particularly flowers, so there are actually a lot of things that make flowers difficult, and I will get to that in a moment, but I want to transition with another poem, and this is also actually a love poem, but it is also about flowers. All right, it's called The Stem, the Potato, and Us. On the internet, I read that you can take a rose, slather the stem in honey, stick it in a potato, plant the potato in dirt, and wait. The internet told me I could expect a new rose in time. It just so happens that we work in a grocery store, in floral and produce, respectively. We discard rose stems and fading potatoes every day, so I told him with a wink that even though we couldn't have kids, we could make a baby this way. And in our eyes, I felt the objection, what if this silly thing from the internet doesn't work, and our potato rose baby doesn't live? What does that mean? So I planted it anyway, and soon the bad potato smelled so bad, I had to set the pot on the fire escape. But I watered it, and I watched the stem remain a stem until one day it was gone. The pot tipped over, potato eaten through by some squirrel with low standards. I guess I'm not going to read into that. Okay. Now, this is a little bit about what I'm kind of researching about the difficult things or dark things or harsh things about flowers. This is about the floral industry, which I love and worked in, but there are things about it that are difficult and not right, actually, and need to be changed, and just in a global sense. So anyway, this is called, part of that same essay, but it's another section. It's called My Flowers Have Ghosts. For all the joy I have designing with flowers, I don't always know how to feel about the industry in a global sense. I can't deny my experiences. I can't deny, for example, the shared tears with customers who lost parents and are struggling to understand the significance of funeral flowers, which they're suddenly expected to buy. I never know exactly what to say in those situations, but I know that the empathy is more important than the sale, and when they feel that, they feel my language of flowers. I can't deny that I love the moments when I feel a tiny portion of their suffering, and in so doing, take a tiny portion of it away. Such moments feed my soul. But I can't deny the other things about this industry. Roses, for example, come from Colombia and Ecuador. Virtually all roses sold in this country come from those two places. The US lost a huge share of the flower market decades ago for several reasons, one of which are encouraging parents to promote legitimate agriculture rather than drug. Pesticides are less strict than they are in the US. That as to in it, I learned there was an explosion of political unrest in Ecuador in October of 2019 because of its power struggle between the government and the working class. People were so angry that they threw things and broke things and refused to work. The floral industry, which is friendly with the Ecuadorian president, took a huge hit. Millions of dollars. Floriculture corporations scrambled. The article I read had this haunting video of someone yelling and running with a blood red rose in his hand. For contrast, when I worked retail floral, I complained about occasionally grumpy customers, occasionally petty coworkers, and $9.75 an hour. As a writer, I want to tell a story that paints the flowers who feed my soul, but I feel like I should tell the other story too, the complicated story of free trade, which crushes some and sends others a dozen roses every Valentine's Day. Juliet said, in her infatuated haze, that a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. I wonder how she would feel if she knew how to strip its thorns and put it in a vase with a bow. I wonder what she would say if her rose was bred for color and shape but had no scent. I wonder what she would think if she saw someone running and yelling angry words with her rose in hand, a rose that for him was a symbol of oppression, not love. That's it. Thanks, Riley.
Yay! Thank you so much, Jenya. That was beautiful. Ugh, I loved it. I'm glad I had flowers sitting next to me while I could enjoy that. I bought these at the grocery store today with my mask on, and I washed my hands as soon as I got home. So, anyways, I'm not here to be a comedian. I'm just here to introduce wonderful readers to you. So, let me introduce to you the next one, which is Eric. So Eric Williams is a second-year candidate for fiction in Iowa State's MFA in Creative Writing and Environment program. He also holds a BA in Modern Literature from UC Santa Cruz. Before relocating to Ames, he spent 5 years and a lot of late nights working in the restaurant industry in New York City. His favorite pastimes there were riding his bike through the city like a game of Frogger and spending too much money on wine. Before New York, he spent 2 years in Latin America working on farms and teaching English. Outside of the MFA, Eric's interests include gardening, running, cooking, and fantasizing about the bygone era in which cell phones did not exist. Well, I hate to tell you, Eric, but if there were cell phones, there wouldn't be this reading right now. But let's see if I can pull you up. There you are! Perfect! Wow us with your work. It looks like there might be a bit of delay. He may not know that he's up, but... Now everyone's gonna see the real behind the scenes.
everybody. I'm not actually on the Facebook, so this is kind of unusual, but I guess everyone's more or less having the same experience. I hope that everybody can hear me. So I'm going to read two short pieces. The first one is about baseball. As a lifelong baseball fan, I've been sad to see that the season has been delayed or perhaps canceled permanently. Anyway, it's called Against the Seams. On June 12th, 1970, Doc Ellis of the Pittsburgh Pirates started against the San Diego Padres. Ellis no-hit the Padres, walking 8, including 3 hit batsmen. What makes the feat less remarkable is that the Padres were only in their second season as a franchise and finished the season with a .389 winning percentage. What makes it more is that Ellis pitched a no-hitter under the influence of LSD. I don't blame people for wondering whether it's true. There was this one sports reporter, Bill Christine, who wouldn't let it go. I practically lived with the team that year, he said to anyone who'd listen. I would have known. If a starting pitcher shows up just 90 minutes before the game time, I would know about it. That cracked me up, that sort of ego. He said, too, he didn't see anything unusual about Ellis, like he's the asset authority. That cracked me up. I might not have believed it myself, except I was there when it happened. It was my first time in LA, and I wanted to make the most of it. I'm the one who put the tab on his tongue. What people forget about Ellis, or choose not to remember, is that as a black player in the 70s, he wouldn't keep his damn mouth shut. Some people call him the Muhammad Ali of baseball. Jackie Robinson himself commended Ellis for his insistence that players have the right to free agency. But it wasn't always pretty for Ellis. In '72, Ellis and a few teammates missed the team bus to Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati. When a security guard asked Ellis for identification and he tried to show his World Series ring as proof, he got maced in response. The Reds organization official response? Sue Ellis for assault. It made him hate better, Ellis said later of the incident. And after 2 years after that, a slow burn, when the Reds, aka the Big Red Machine, were at the height of their dominance, Ellis attempted to hit every player in their lineup. He hit Pete Rose, he hit Joe Morgan, he hit Dan Dressen, and only walked Tony Perez because he managed to dodge a ball aimed at his head before Ellis was pulled from the game. It might seem short-sighted to go after the Reds players when it was the organization that sued him, but Ellis knew what we all knew, understood the inherent relationship between owners and workers. He understood that the players, especially the black ones, were property of the team, that by going after the heroes of the Reds team, Ellis was jeopardizing their precious investment. Who's going to come see the Reds play if Pete Rose is on the bench? How are they going to win games if Joe Morgan can't play? Ellis saw the way the owner set the players up on the field like chess pieces and sat back high in their skybox to watch them have it out. I saw it too, from where I was standing every morning, waiting in a line at the mill to punch the clock. Yeah, I was a Pittsburgh boy. Ellis wasn't the only one going to the moon that day. I put a tab on his tongue, he put one on mine. He left so suddenly, I didn't have a chance to think to go with him, so I just sat there, in the empty apartment, and watched the game. I watched Ellis pitch, and I watched him struggle. I felt something then, a struggle of my own, one I've never been able to quite describe. The Padres came to bat in long black cassocks turned into their high socks. Richard Nixon was the home plate umpire and was wearing a collarette. When Ellis pitched, Nixon called the balls and strikes with one of his enormous pink tentacles protruding out his ass, like he was trying to shit out an octopus. The tentacles, there must have been a dozen of them, were thick as a thigh and had these huge suckers running up and down them. Every time Ellis sat at the mound and began his windup, those tentacles were floating right above him, waiting to strike, waiting for him to fall out of line. See, the thing is, especially back then, baseball wanted blacks to follow the rules, to stay in line, to keep the course. For a pitcher, that meant throwing strikes, right down the middle of the plate, strike after strike after strike. Every time Ellis threw a ball, I saw him squirm as one of those pink suckers struck him blind. It wasn't just Nixon behind the plate. When the Pirates were at bat, it was Mr. Hornish, the foreman at the mill. He used to smack me upside the head with a rolled-up newspaper if I arrived a minute late. It took 11 minutes instead of 10 for my break. That wasn't all, you see. Nixon, Hornish, they wanted the same thing. They wanted Ellis to throw strikes, tip his hat, keep quiet. They wanted me to keep my mouth shut and keep the line moving, not to make a fuss, not to raise any objections, not to talk any pay disputes, unequal treatment. Every time Ellis threw a ball, whip, shock. Every time I gave Hornish the eye, whip, shock. After the no-hitter, Ellis won't be the same player. He will brawl with his manager, Don Leppert, wear hair curlers on the field, call Commissioner Kuhn a racist, publicly criticize George Steinbrenner, and bean Pete Rose again, all as a result. Next week, when I go back to work, there will be an iron fence when there wasn't before. The sky will be slate gray, the color of unpolished steel. I'll stand outside the fence, eyeing Hornish in his oily overalls, holding his megaphone and clipboard, calmly shouting about efficiency and order, peeking through a hole in the fence. I'll see everything in shades of black and white, almost like I was being filmed in somebody else's movie. It'll crack me up. All right. So I have one more short story to read. It's called Where Do We Go From Here? I prefer to travel alone so that I can get lost, so that I can move endlessly from place to place, staying in rundown hostels or in high-end hotels, living on boats and camping on farms, bribing my way across borders and onto the backs of freight trains, while I collect new languages and experience whole relationships in the course of a single night. I am lost in this dream, headed towards the island of the sun, lost somewhere between the invisible border that separates Bolivia and Peru, that separates where I have been from where I am going. On the boat, I meet Catalina, a law student from Argentina. Her travel pack is not full of clothes or comforts from home, but tomb-sized law books. By way of introduction, I ask her how much of them she's read. She corrects my Spanish. I don't know Catalina any better than I know this island. I try not to think about what's waiting for me on the other side of this sun. We land on the north shore of the island and chart a descent up to the village. The village sits up top an enormous stone staircase, littered with an army of small children intent on selling us a shorter journey. Altitude is a mile high, and as we ascend, my lungs gasp for thin, wispy air, the type of breathing that feels like filling buckets of water with holes in the bottom. Between my two backpacks, I'm an extra 100 pounds. I don't ask Catalina how much more she's carrying. The children, though, are weightless, floating in and out of our fields of vision, taunting us from behind and appearing 6 steps ahead. They ask us if we know where we are going, where we are from. They tell us their aunt or cousin or neighbor has a hostel right around the bend, very cheap, very clean. Why not? Where are we going? Mara asked me the same question a month ago when I left her apartment. We met in a New York elevator, discovered we were going to the same place, a friend of a friend's birthday, and built something from that small chance encounter. She was wearing a magnificent white coat, something royal that went down to her ankles, a camera around her neck. After I worked up some courage, I showed her some photos I'd taken while traveling. She rolled her eyes and shoved me into a cab. I told her I was leaving soon, and she shrugged her shoulders. It didn't need to mean anything. Well, what did it mean? In my letters to her, I needed a time for our time together, so I called it transcontinental. It's late now. The sun is starting to set, and Catalina and I are on the south side of the island, far from our hostel. We were on the beach, sitting around a fire with some fellow travelers, drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. The smoking calms my breath, and for the first time all day, I don't feel my lungs gasping for air. Where are we going? Where have we been? Nobody asks. Nobody wants to know. Along the quiet shoreline, the fire is a fine substitute for the sun. I'm heading back, Catalina announces, and I don't know whether I'm supposed to follow her or not, but I do. We've been walking all day. My legs are heavy, my head light. The sun sets and we lose our path back to the other side of the island, back to our hostel. We wander through the dark streets, shunned by electricity, wondering if this or that stray dog might lead us home. The mixture of exhaustion and altitude sickness pretends an argument, and I wonder whether I have the fluency for anger. But just as we start to point fingers, our fingers interlock, and the fear that was there before transmutes into trust. We don't have a flashlight. The small light of Catalina's phone guides us about 15 steps an inch. We trek through a dense forest of eucalyptus trees, no path in sight, no plan for how to resume it. But instead of worried, I just feel more lost than ever. The way I feel on a 12-hour bus ride, on a 3-day boat ride down the river, out in the country, away from all the towers of communication, waiting at a rural station 2 hours before the next train. When there's nowhere to go, nothing else to do. A loud part of my mind quiets then, and I feel this wonderful economy of emotion. It's like paying for something with exact change. There is nothing to spare, and all that there is pays for the present. It's just as I settle into this calm, the forest recedes and reveals a path. Catalina breaks our grip and runs ahead to resume it. She crosses a wooden bridge and waves at me from the other side, motioning for me to hurry up and follow. Around the corner there's a store, she says, and it's open and they have wine. Why not? Where am I going? In 3 months, I will fly back to New York. Mara will be waiting for me at the airport. She will be smiling at me from behind her camera lens, wearing her magnificent white coat. Her camera will collect snapshots to hang on our new fridge, 3x4 reminders of where I have been, conversation starters for cocktail parties that we will host, populated by people I will see every weekend for years to come, but who will seem like strangers compared to the strangers I met on the beach. An unfamiliar breed of strange people who will ask, "So, what's your 5-year plan?" When I see Mara in the airport, I will have trouble believing that she was there for me. When I see the coat, I will have trouble placing it. Where was it that I saw it again? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. That was wonderful. And sorry, I forgot that I had muted myself on WebEx, which meant that you couldn't hear me. And you still can't hear me because I'm still muted on there. But alas, our Facebook friends can hear me, and I guess that's what matters right now. So, moving on to our next reader. Zara Chowdhary is a screenwriter with an MA in writing for performance from the University of Leeds. She's now getting acquainted with prose and nonfiction and rekindling her love affair with poetry through the MFA in creative writing and environment. She started as a set runner a very long time ago, worked her way up as a producer and assistant director for TV commercials and indie projects, ran a digital filmmaking studio, served as a copywriter on nationwide ad campaigns, and was one of 6 storytellers in a writer's room for the Indian movie studio Eros International. In this program, Zara has focused on sci-fi literature and speculative fiction theories, Holocaust writing, and imagery and theater direction. Her work has won her the Pearl Hogref Award in Creative Nonfiction in 2019, the MBICW Fellowship for Parent Writers in 2018, and she's just completed a summer internship program with Turner Classic Movies and Original Documentary Production last summer. So, sorry, I totally did a spoonerism of your first and last name there, Zara and Chowdhary. I said Zower, but anyways, here is the wonderful Zara. Let me pull her up for you guys. Hi.
Zara Chowdhary, I said sour, but anyways.
Oh, you're still listening to me delayed.
Zara. Let me pull her up for you guys.
Zara, you may want to turn the volume off on your Facebook because it's a little bit behind.
Hi. Zara Chowdhary, I said.
Hey, hi everybody. I don't know if you can hear me. if you can. Right, this is so great. It's so nice to know that everyone's there, even though I can't see everybody's faces. But I miss all of you, and I wish we were doing this in person. But since we're not, I'm really, really grateful to Riley that we're able to do this here. And okay, what I'm going to do is really read two very quick poems because I'm in this amazing poetry workshop with Deb Marquardt, and yeah, it's very fancy that I get to write poems finally in 3 years that I've been here. This first one actually needs a title, so all suggestions are welcome. As you can see, I'm workshopping my work right here online. But okay, this is how it goes. It's apropos for the time of day. It's a sunset poem. The first bit is by Dionysus, and thank you, Alison Justice, for teaching me how to say his name. Dionysus. Fire is in all things, is spread everywhere, pervades all things without intermingling with them, shining by its very nature and yet hidden, and manifesting its presence only when it can find material on which to work. Violent and invisible, having absolute rule over all things, mysteriously increasing itself and showing forth its majesty according to the nature of the substance, receiving it, powerful and mighty and invisibly present in all things. This was Dionysus hundreds of years ago, and my poem is in conversation with this little piece about fire. Dionysus, today I looked at the sunset and exclaimed, "Look, it's as if the sun is on fire." And it's only after the words escape that I realize my point. Order is a mirage. Perfect circles don't exist. These are stories we tell ourselves. Slight distinction between burning and being set on fire that sets us sail from admiration to fear. For a few weeks now, we had stood bathed in half admiration, half fear. We swing pendulum-like at how such a tiny virus brought the whole planet to a standstill, no? We smile, nervous. We say as if hoping the words will somehow buy us an immunity that doesn't exist. Did it, though, come to a standstill? Planet still moves, an old car rumbling down a pothole street, and yet the rattle we feel in our bones isn't from this scientific certainty, but our prayers for what lies beyond the blazing horizon. Half dream, half nightmare, we expect any minute now our world too will be set on fire. Stomachs ablaze, breath combusts in chests. One fire keeps us alive, another eats our inside. All we can do is lift our eyes, straight clouds that pass, under the fire's watch, unafraid. All we can do is hope, turn vapor to more abundant light. All we can do is look, sun, and say, "Look, it's on fire, Dionysus. Did you know? It's always been on fire." It's my first one. And then the second one I dedicate to my son, who is in the other room. And if you hear him laughing aloud, he's not laughing at my poem, laughing at How to Train Your Dragon, because he is not interested in what his mother writes. All right, this one's called Online Teaching, because it's the state of mind we are all in. It starts with a little epigraph which says, if you were to look at the solar system, and obviously there's other things in the solar system, and we'll talk more about them in the next video, you wouldn't even notice this speck. This is a little dust thing flying around the sun. And this is from Khan Academy, and the quote is from Sal Khan, his video Scale of Earth Sun. Sun, next time you walk on a beach, and waves, gulls, clouds are your measure, your scale of self, find yourself always at the center. Fall instead to your knees. Press your palms to the sand. Close your fingers and feel grains slip, sip, empty away. Lift your palm to the sun and see bits that choose to stick. They glint, blinding, brilliant. Ask them with humble heads. What love do you carry? What life do you hold? What giant's farm do I like? That's it, folks. Stay safe. I miss you guys. Bye.
Thank you, Zara. Okay. Wow. I can't believe we are on to our last reader, and yet here we are. So let me introduce to you our last reader for the night. Taylor Sklenar is a playwright, poet, and theater artist living in Ames, Iowa. He recently spent 2 years pursuing his MA in theater in Columbia, Missouri, where he served as the managing director of the Missouri Playwrights Workshop and the Mizzou New Play Series. He is the Hogarth Fellow in Creative Writing and Environment at ISU, resident playwright at Minneapolis-based theater company 2140 Productions, founder of Ames-based theater collective Focal Theater Lab. His writing, which explores the intersection of science, ecology, and theater, has been workshopped or produced at Tallgrass Theater's Iowa Playwrights Workshop, Stage West Des Moines Script Tease, Theater Cedar Rapids, Focal Theater Lab, Minnesota Fringe, Scene 1 Theater, the Missouri Playwrights Workshop, the William Ing Festival, and the Kennedy Center Undergraduate Playwrights Workshop. Wow, you gave me a tongue twister there with your bio, Taylor, but it is quite impressive. So let me pull you up so the world can see you. Ah, there you are. Perfect. Go on ahead.
Thank you so much, Riley, for putting up with my tongue twister, and thank you to everyone who's tuning in. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this virtually. When I first talked to Riley about doing Emerging Writers, I told her, I was really excited about doing it, but my one stipulation was that I'm not going to be wearing pants. So it's really just lucky that it worked out the way it did, I think. Anyway, like she said, I'm a playwright first and foremost, and sort of a poet secondary. But I'm going to be reading some poems for you today, given that that's a little bit easier than doing a full performance of other theatrical things in my little study here. So I'm going to read for you 3 poems that are all sort of part of a longer series that I'm working on, that are about a friend of mine who was very close to me growing up, who I recently lost. And the only things you really need to know, so the first 2 are about moments of flashes of our youth, and take place in a very small town where we grew up. So this first poem is called Schlepping the 42-inch flat screen across Trainer, 2 a.m. Red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, we stop. Heart like a fistfight, backseat loaded. White knuckle side handles, we swallow stones, eyes locked. We fear justice for hollow crimes. Boots, 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 boots. We record play the fact, we own it, we own it, we own it. Sunburst, eyes violate. Good to go. The red signs mean stop. Skin glows, vampiric pale, streetlight relief, and we are safe. Why wouldn't we be safe in Trainer? We laugh, not knowing what we don't know. He didn't even mention the TV. So that's the first one. We did not steal a TV. We did actually own it. We were moving it from his house to mine, for the record. The second poem is called Invincible. Dawn cracks open a monster bender. Stars can't stop us. The night can't stop us. We're gods on the TV screen. Gunfire and kill-death ratio popping off like my parents' smoky basement. It's a battlefield and a throne room. We charge into the morning, collect the first cut of golden rays. We're up a tree, over the chain link fence, golf course misty greened. Our feet leaves dashes of smashed out dew. We stomp a cartoon penis for coffee fisted neighbors discover from back porches. Breathing aether, I sprint, baseball finish, slide, foot catches, hidden sprinkler, head, gash. He laughs. I bleed. The fence is much taller without a tree to climb. It's good short, snag on barb, open like my nerves as we somersault over, fallen. He limps me the basement sink, attacks the trail of crimson clues pursuing us back around controllers, empty cans, and out to macroscopic phallus. Caffeine and adrenaline give way to unholy throb. One-legged, I grip porcelain altar, limb bent backwards, rubber, cotton balls, and toilet paper muddying red as I balance God in me, staring down the fact there is someone upstairs I have to answer to. Parents. The parents. I have to tell my parents. What do I tell my parents? Corrupted blood and tetanus lay on hands. It's 5:30. I have to wake my parents, maybe ER. How to explain the return? Bright-eyed and psychic, wielding broken cheater plug. Third prong, rusty, broken, jagged, like Satan's pitchfork, waiting to catch the foot of wayward angels, and I am saved. He smiles back meekly. In the next room, the game has gone unpaused, echoing death rattles in perpetual cycles. Our rankings plummet amidst our negligent escapades. And the last poem I'll be reading for you is called Splinters, and it's in multiple parts. Splinters. 1. Every time I return to Trainer, I greet the antique table, abandon in parents' pile of garage, waiting like a patient brother for my return. And I whisper reminders of how I will one day refurbish it. Soon. And I believe it. When I see my last friend in this town, after 5 years, he reminds me that he still considers me a brother. I agree. Soon. 2. When my mother turns the Facebook screen stone-faced towards me, Dad does not understand why I leave the room. Doesn't understand why he catches me mining for lost legs and lattice in the garage at midnight. Why I boil my mind down to hands on century-old grain, peeling back mildewed veneer. Why I cram these scarce hours with sanding, leaving sawdust on my funeral blacks. Why I insist on staying until it's completed, sweat dropping on shlup, shlup, shlup of rusty plane across time-roughed surface, hand slip gouge, open fibers, darken when lacquer is applied, sealing blood drop like amber, an imperfect moment preserved. Or why, as the sun dies back, mosquitoes picking at exposed back, neck, shoulders, arms, flesh, I drag it inside, choke on confined fumes in the basement where we once smoked DIY hookah. 3. I can't seem to understand why I refuse to leave this woodwork looking so poor. My mother says nothing, shows me where the tools hide, dusts off my jacket, drives me to the service. Thank you all very much. That's all I got.
Great. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. And the best part about doing this virtually means that people can come back and watch this later too. So if you missed out on part of it, or if you know someone that couldn't watch this live but would love to watch it later, I believe Facebook will make an archived version of the video and you can go back and watch it later. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We will hopefully, next time we do an emerging writers reading, be gathering in person so that we can be sharing snacks and hugs and whatever else we need to. So have a wonderful evening, stay safe, stay healthy, and maybe in the privacy of your home, give our readers a little round of applause. I'm sure they will hear your applause from wherever they are. Again, thanks so much, guys. Have a great evening.